morning and welcome to The Skinny for Friday, August 1st. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my colleague Ray Roa, the editor-in-chief with Creative Loafing newspaper. Good morning, Ray.
Morning, Mitch. How's it going?
Good. Great to be here. We're finally in August, which is exciting because we're
finally
closer.
Cooling down, isn't it?
No, but we're closer to September, which is like football season, which is kind of exciting. Hey, so later in the program, we're going to speak to a union member here in Hillsborough County who thinks the local Democratic Party is asleep at the wheel, basically, when it comes to addressing the concerns of working class people. So you want to stick around for that. But first, sitting right down in our studio right now here in WMNF here in Tampa is another local Hillsborough County Democrat. That's U.S. Representative Castor, who has served representing the Tampa Bay area in Congress for nearly 19 years now. Congresswoman Castor, thanks so much for joining us on The Skinny.
Good morning.
Great to have you here with us. So you're here on your August break. So we started a little earlier in July. Of course, Speaker Mike Johnson wanted to get out of town for whatever reason last week, I guess it was.
And we know the reason.
We'll get to that shortly here. It's we really appreciate you. Since we've been doing The Skinny the last 3 years, you've come in every August break to speak with us, and we really appreciate that. I want to tell you that. So let's talk about things that maybe aren't so pleasant, because there's a lot of things that really maybe aren't right now in our sphere here. The Democratic Party. We can talk about Donald Trump and what's been going on, obviously, in Washington. But I want to talk right now about the party. Right now, I don't have to tell you this, but I will anyway. The image is not so great right now, right? New Wall Street Journal poll, the latest to come out last weekend, shows that basically the lowest point the party's been in more than 3 decades. Survey finds that 63% of voters hold an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party, the highest share in journal polls dating to 1990, and 30 percentage points higher than the 33% who hold a favorable view. Now, that's a far weaker assessment than voters give to either President Trump or the Republican Party, who are viewed more unfavorably than favorably by 7 points and 11 points, respectively. A mere 8% of voters view the Democrats very favorably, compared with 19% who showed that level of enthusiasm for the GOP. Why do you think that is?
There is a frustration at government at all levels, both parties. It's very difficult for Democrats to be out of power entirely, not to have a majority in the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, the administration, and I hear it every day. They're frustrated with the Trump chaos, the corruption. They want Democrats fighting back harder. And you might remember that you interviewed me, I think it was right after the general election last year, and you asked me, what am I most concerned about heading into it? And I said, the Trump chaos, the chaos he would inflict upon our great country, among Americans, and it has come true. We have this affordability squeeze, and everything that he has done is to raise cost on American families and small businesses, whether it's tariffs or the big ugly bill. And then we have this 5-alarm fire for democracy itself. And I do not discount the frustration among Democrats, among people who are not aligned with the party, among Republicans. They want better, and they deserve better.
What do you think? We just saw Kamala Harris come out yesterday and say she's not ready for the governor of California. She may or may not run for president again. But it brought me back to thinking about that election. And when you look back now on the election of 2024, and there's been so many articles written and white papers produced and studies and et cetera about, I think this is a real big test for the Democrats, because unlike when when Donald Trump won 8 years ago, he still lost the popular vote, right? This time it was different. He did win the popular vote. He won better on all demographics than he did 8 years earlier. And it just seems the Democratic Party reminds me of like the 1980s. They really are in this kind of malaise of like, what do we do here? What do you come out of the 2024 election, of all the different things that we look at that you think that maybe the party can do better going forward?
Well, that election was a cost of living election, and the fact that Biden was declining and was not a good communicator, because I was really proud of everything that we worked on to do everything we can to put money back into people's pockets, whether that's finally winning on Medicare to negotiate drug prices, or capping the price of insulin, or all of our good clean energy, tax rebates, put money back in your pocket. But But Trump tapped into this great frustration across the country with inflation and the cost of living. And it is dismaying, though, that people were willing to vote for someone who fomented a violent insurrection on our democracy, and his outright racist views, always dividing us. But what I see now, Mitch, I don't think it's. I think we're heading towards a backlash election, and I hear it from friends who, no matter how they're registered to vote, this is not what they voted for. They didn't vote for the chaos and the corruption, his tearing down of everything that makes America great, our scientific research, our soft power across the world. So I don't think, I don't spend a lot of time focusing on, dysfunction among Democrats. I focus on really trying to lift up my neighbors and tackle the cost of living and the affordability squeeze.
Well, then let's talk about, again, we're speaking with Democratic Congresswoman Kathy Castor here in Skinny about working with your Republican colleagues, because obviously you can still try to get good legislation done that isn't just necessarily promulgated by the White House, or can you? I know there's a lot of criticism Democrats have about Republicans who think they don't show much independence at all under this president. Let me ask you, too, because I know you were prepared for, like you said, the chaos, but this is definitely different than it was in 2017, right? We heard a lot of concerns. I know Democrats who thought the end of the world was going to happen in 2017, and really, in comparison, it wasn't. I mean, it was kind of a normal presidency, if you will, a conservative, obviously a Republican in office here. Now you've got, again, a trifecta in Washington, and so the president these first 2 years has so much power, and we can get into the big, beautiful Bill Act in a moment here. But, right, all the executive orders, et cetera. This has got to have overwhelmed the Democrats who didn't think that because he didn't do this 8 years ago. Some of this, the executive, the power of going after universities, of changing certain laws and enforcing private law firms, et cetera, to bend to his will.
Yeah, they had a plan, Project 2025, and it has been a well-funded strategy. And I don't think America was ready. I don't think a lot of people really took it seriously. They thought, that's a fun tagline, Project 2025, dismantling the National Weather Service, taking hurricane preparedness.
Remember the Democratic Party convention? The Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live brought the 125 pages out, and so it was kind of looked at kind of humorously, actually, in a way, this Project 2025. But it was the blueprint. It was,
and it goes back to big money in politics. All the way back to that Citizens United, where big corporations and the ultra wealthy now could have outsized influence when the Supreme Court took away the guardrails on campaign finance and opened up the floodgates to special interest money. And then Trump it's right out in the open. For example, earlier this week, you were at a press conference where we talked about, at Mar-a-Lago 1 year ago, the fossil fuel industry showed up and he said, if you invest $1 billion into my campaign, I'm going to deliver it for you. And boy, has he ever, to the detriment of our pocketbooks and the future of the planet.
Now, you talked about inflation. The other, I think, big issue was immigration. So let's talk about that. We've got, of course, down in South Florida, Alligator Alcatraz, as it's officially known as. So you've got to kind of call it that, whether you want to or not. That has kind of become, I think, ground zero of the summer of the issue about immigration and how divided the country is about this. But again, I'm going to go back to this poll, Wall Street Journal, from last Monday, that 1,500 registered voters, and they showed that 62% of people favor deporting people who came to the country illegally. I know there's been this divide here about, we thought, some people thought it was to be criminals. But of course, the president in his campaign said mass deportations, and that was never going to be just criminals. Nevertheless, I mean, it is what it is right now. Tom Homan was here a few weeks ago. He said at this Charlie Kirk event at the Tampa Convention Center, basically, everybody's on the table. So we saw earlier this year some of your colleagues, they were out, the Maryland man who was, kidnapped, whatever you want to call it, out there to El Salvador. We see some high-profile incidents, some of your colleagues, again, getting roughed up at ICE detention facilities, what have you. So there's a lot out there. But do you think that you talked about overplaying this? I don't know if right now the country feels he's doing that yet. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing, some high-profile incidents with this with ICE. But the idea of that Joe Biden had let just too many folks come across the last 3 years. It does seem to me that mattered to a lot of Americans, and they're still maybe giving Trump some leeway about that in terms of detaining people right now. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that most people, no matter your political stripes, believe that if you came to the country in an undocumented fashion and you committed a crime, a heinous crime, a murder, rape, robbery, that you should be deported forthwith. The problem is now the Trump administration and Governor DeSantis now have turned this into, if you were here legally, for example, on temporary protected status, or parole, where people came from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti legally, and they were screened, and they had sponsors, and they were given work permits. Now they are saying, they are characterizing all of those folks as here illegally because they withdrew parole and TPS, and they are sweeping them up illegally, broad violations of due process. Star chamber detention facilities. These stories now out of CCOT in El Salvador are outrageous, that you can sweep up people that live in America and deport them to a star chamber outside of our country. It violates everything that we stand for. And now the danger is on the big, ugly bill. Republicans in Congress have now given the administration $150 billion to continue this, to fund their Gestapo, to enter into contracts with other countries to take people who are innocent. And the courts are holding somewhat. Sometimes the Department of Justice is thumbing their nose at it, but it's going to be up to the people here to stand up for what America is. And we are a country of laws. We're based on the Constitution. We're not a country of a dictator or a number of dictators. And I'm hearing it as it costs more, as people lose employees. A lot of business owners are talking to us behind the scenes. They're afraid of the retribution. However, they're afraid of what Ron DeSantis does, and they're afraid of what Trump can bring down. But I sense this growing backlash among people of all political stripes because it is cruel, inhumane, and they have gone way too far.
What about a backlash amongst your, Republican colleagues over there on the Hill? You obviously talk with them all the time, and you have a lot of private conversations. But the fact is, the party is getting a lot done for the donors. But I can't imagine that they're not frustrated and disgusted with the actions coming out of the White House. Without giving away too much, in your private conversations, how fed up are they with having to hold their nose? And do you sense any kind of significant backlash from lawmakers who are ready to rebel, maybe? I don't know, that's kind of a strong word, but push back against the president? The only places I've seen it is with tariffs. Actually, immigration, no, that's their issue. They get a lot of political capital talking about immigration. That's why a lot of them were elected. So they in the big ugly bill, they thought it was fine to rip away food assistance and health care, add over $3 trillion to the debt, and create $150 billion for an immigration force without creating a pathway to work or pathway to citizenship that most people, when you talk to them, they believe in that. A pathway to work. If you learn English, right, you play by the rules, you're not in trouble, that you can be here legally, because that's part of our broken immigration. Let me ask you about that. Your colleague in South Florida, Maria Salazar, has a bill, the Dignity Act, which I know is co-sponsored by Veronica Escobar of Texas. I don't think you're a co-sponsor. Do you support that? Because that's basically a comprehensive immigration bill along the lines of what Marco Rubio supported a decade ago. It's a step in the right direction. I'd like to see for certain people a pathway to citizenship, and her bill is just a pathway to work. For example, the Dreamers, who this is the only country they know. They came here as young people. They are working. They are playing by the rules. If they've gotten in trouble, they're subject to deportation. But that thousands and thousands of young people, and without some of those elements, I'm not going to sign on. But it's a step in the right direction. But that's an outlier, Mitch. There's no interest right now
among Republicans in Congress to focus on solutions and things that really work.
And in fact, she got blasted by a lot of people for doing that in the Republican Party. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:21. You're listening to WMNF in Tampa, 88.5 FM. Mitch Perry, Ray Roa. We're speaking with Tampa Representative Kathy Castor. Let's talk about the issue in Israel and Gaza right now. Of course, a lot of reporting for months basically about a possibility of mass starvation taking place in the Gaza Strip, but the story has really broken through in the last week. And also we've seen it now where it's changing, where Britain, France, and Canada are now talking about recognizing the Palestinians as a state of the UN General Assembly in New York City in September. Meanwhile, Americans' approval of Israel's military action dropped to just 32% in a Gallup poll released this week. And on Wednesday in the Senate, 27 Democrats voted to block the sale of 20,000 fully automated assault rifles to Israel's National Police. In a subsequent vote, 24 Democrats voted to block the sale of heavy-grade munitions. All Republicans opposed both resolutions. If you had a chance to vote on that, how would you have voted on those arms issues?
It's likely at this point that I would support a ban on offensive weapons. This is a tragedy. The humanitarian scale of what is happening in Gaza is an absolute tragedy. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he will go down in history as a cruel and evil leader. If you go back, he benefited from the situation with Hamas, and he took his eye off the ball because, you remember, he was fomenting an attack on his own judiciary that provided an opening for Hamas's brutal attack on October 7th. And during this war, he has had every opportunity to work sincerely on ceasefires and making sure that this didn't escalate into starvation and a humanitarian crisis for people in Gaza. But he has aligned himself with the ultra-right wing to stay in power. I mean, he is in the midst of a corruption trial. And the only people who will support him staying in power are the ultra-right wing. So he has marginalized the majority of people who live in Israel who want a ceasefire. Now Hamas also has to release the hostages. And there's one positive development today, a surprise that 22 Arab nations now have come forward calling for Hamas to end its rule, to lay down their weapons. All of 22 Arab nations now have condemned the October 7th attack. They are demanding a ceasefire, a release of hostages, and a two-state solution. And that's what you see countries now across the world signaling. Netanyahu, you must stop this. It's time for a ceasefire. We've got to surge all humanitarian aid in there. What the Trump administration has done on USAID has weakened our ability to respond, and we cannot allow this to go on one day longer.
I have to ask you about also one of your constituents, Palestinian American Saifoa Musalat, 20 years old, was beaten to death by settlers, we believe, in the West Bank last month. I know you put a statement out about that. Our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, had spoken out pretty strongly about that. Do we know if the U.S. is doing anything about looking into that situation?
I haven't gotten a follow-up from the ambassador's office, but Sam Liccardo, a congressman from California, and I are leading a group of members in demanding more information regarding this heartbreaking killing of Mr. Musalat, who's from the Tampa Bay area. I'm still trying to confirm that he's actually one of my constituents, but he's a Tampa Bay resident, and we're going to keep advocating for justice here. And I want folks to know that every single day in our congressional office, we are dealing with immigration issues. It is the top call to the office. We're trying to help families, whether you're caught up in an immigration sweep unlawfully, you had a traffic stop and a state trooper and you were parroted away, or anything going on overseas, folks should call us with specific constituent cases. For example, the unbelievable disappearing of Heidi Sanchez, who was the nursing mother who showed up voluntarily for her ICE appointment and was ripped away from her breastfeeding child, who is a U.S. citizen, whose husband is a U.S. citizen, who was taken to Cuba. Those are real life situations where we can have an impact, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to reunite that family as well.
Progressives had a reckoning this week, finding themselves maybe agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene about calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide. Thinking back to October 2023 with that resolution, condemning Hamas. Now, in hindsight, do you think there's anything that could have been done legislatively or within that resolution to prevent Netanyahu from going forward with some of the starvation that's going on right now?
The Biden administration really tried, and you've got to have the Arab nations also weighing in with it. So that's why this is a positive announcement today for 22 Arab nations to call on Hamas to step aside in a ceasefire. But they had, Netanyahu really hitched his fate to the Israeli extremists. People of Israel want this to end. They are tired of this too, yes, all pressure should be put on Netanyahu to stop the madness, and Hamas too. Release the hostages, work towards a ceasefire.
It's 27 minutes after the hour. You're just tuning in right now. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF Radio in Tampa, 88.5 FM. Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe, speaking to Congresswoman Kathy Castor. Let's talk about closer to home here in Florida. Ron DeSantis he said it again this week in Tampa. I asked him about it. By bringing in his GOP-controlled state legislature to attempt to gerrymander congressional boundaries in advance of next year's midterm election after being encouraged to do so by President Donald Trump. There's even some speculation this could potentially hurt your chance for re-election. Tell me your level of concern about this.
Well, the Republicans are going to cheat because the big ugly bill is so unpopular among everyone, and they know that there is a growing backlash. Just like the last time Trump was president, the Democrats were not empowered in the House, a huge backlash across the country. The Democrats took control of the House of Representatives and were able to put some stops to a lot of the more egregious and outrageous Trump administration policies. They see that coming again. So they intend to rig the game. That's what's going on. They want to start in Texas. No doubt that they're going to look at Florida. The question is, do other states start to react too? And then folks say, well, this has gone on too far. But this is rigging the game. This doesn't happen. You don't go through reapportionment and redistricting halfway through. It happens every 10 years after the census, where you study the population patterns and follow up. But here in Florida, Ron DeSantis has thumbed his nose at the voters of Florida consistently. The voters of Florida passed fair district amendments by constitutional amendment years ago that said keep communities intact, considered various populations, don't cross bodies of water. After the last census, the legislature actually adhered to it, but that wasn't good enough for Governor DeSantis, and he forced through his own map. And
his map got approved by the Florida Supreme Court just a couple weeks ago, actually. That's why the original map did not have you coming into Pinellas County, your district, as it was years ago, but it does now. It does seem, I don't know, and I certainly haven't done the calculation. I don't know if anybody in your staff has looked at this yet, but you like you said, I mean, they're probably going to do this. He said this week that he hasn't actually talked to me, the legislature, because, he doesn't get along with some of those people, but nevertheless, he seems committed to doing this, but he also said he wanted to see that the census is going to have an updated information, and I don't think they're going to do that. I reached out to the Commerce Department about that, haven't heard back, but as you said, I mean, we saw this map in Texas released yesterday. It looks like literally 5 Republicans will be added on because the president is fearful that they'll lose control of the House next year. And yes, the governor of California, governor of New York, they might get involved with this. But so are you concerned though about the viability of what might happen in your district next year?
I'm concerned for what it means for Tampa Bay area voters. Absolutely, that they have a voice. It's really, let's just say, it's stupid to not have people representing the state of Florida from both parties. We, if you want to get things done, it's really important to have fair representation. And what I can do is make sure that all of our neighbors know what is happening, but really to be their voice and stand up for them, for their health care, for the cost, to fight for the cost of housing, to lower their electric bills. They deserve so much better than what they're getting now from this governor. And it's partly, some of this is a distraction from the failure of Ron DeSantis to make living in Florida affordable, like it was, when he was elected. The Republicans in Florida have done more to damage the bank accounts and bottom lines for working people here than any group since I've been alive.
So let's get into the Big Beautiful Bill Act, as it's called.
Let me correct you. It's the Big Ugly.
I know that's the Democrats line there. Okay, so but because it's important to know what's going to be happening with SNAP and also with Medicaid, because some of these implications are not going to happen immediately. Correct. I mean, some are they're delaying it until after the midterm election. The real, hurtful parts.
No, there's going to be serious damage right off the bat. Okay. First, on food assistance, that goes primarily to kids. Our older neighbors and veterans rely on SNAP and food assistance. You will see that ratchet back because it asks states to cover some of the shortfalls that the feds now are sending to fund tax breaks for the ultra wealthy. So the state of Florida, do you think the state of Florida is going to ante up $1.5 billion to cover the shortfall from the feds? I don't think so. So that will happen very soon. But Florida's going to be hit harder than just about any other state because of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. You might remember under Obamacare, this was a godsend to entrepreneurs and part-time workers, folks in hospitality, because they don't have health insurance through their employer. So the Affordable Care Act ended the bar on coverage for, even if you have a pre-existing condition, so many people could get it. What the Democrats did was lower the cost of those health care premiums if you're a working class person. So we now have almost 5 million Floridians who rely on the ACA for affordable coverage.
Most in the country.
The most in the country, more than Texas, New York, California. So what the Republicans have done is rip those tax credits away for families to fund their tax breaks for the ultra wealthy. We anticipate that means that maybe 4 million Floridians are going to be facing higher health insurance costs right away next year, because right now the open enrollment period will be November. Insurance companies are setting their rates. They've already signaled that they know they're going to be losing customers. And when you couple that with Medicaid, all of the damage to medical and scientific research through the National Institutes of Health that hurts our Moffitt Cancer Center, USF, all scientific research. They're taking trillions of dollars out of healthcare. This is their grand plan. This was what happened in the first Trump administration that was kind of saved by John McCain. This is a backdoor repeal to the Affordable Care Act. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And unfortunately, when I say death, people are going to die. People are going to suffer. They're not going to get the health care that they need because they're not going to be able to afford it. Instead, all of those monies now are going to line the pockets of the ultra wealthy through tax.
By the way, if you're just joining us, the voice you're hearing is U.S. Rep. Castor, who has represented the 14th District here since 2006. Question, Congresswoman, thinking about this guy, Mamdani, and his message and the swelling there, how much are Democrats watching what's happening here and maybe taking some cues? We're going to have a labor leader in here who's just become so, divorced the party locally. What's that like for you guys to watch what's happening with his race and how much of that platform do you think you guys will pick up?
That's the bottom line. The affordability squeeze is it, and people really deserve so much better. I know. I mean, that's what fueled the rise of Trump. People were so frustrated with inflation. Look at the housing market around here, and people are trying to recover from hurricanes and rebuild their lives. That's it right now. That's what I hear from people over and over and over. Young people who say They're not going to have kids. They're not planning a family. They just don't expect to ever be able to own a house around here. And that has to change. That's not right. So it's all about how we fight to put money back into pockets. But we have to make sure people understand what happened in the big, ugly bill. Why is their health care more expensive? Because Trump and the Republicans wanted to give that to tax breaks to billionaires. Why are you losing the ability to improve your home with tax credits to replace doors, windows, be more energy efficient, tap cleaner, cheaper energy through solar power? That's all going away to pay for tax cuts for the ultra wealthy.
This seems to be, you're kind of foreshadowing, this is going to be the campaign. The Democrats, I think, want this to be on next year, the midterms, is talking about this major domestic bill, right? That's what you're talking about today is what you're going to be pounding through.
It's real life. It's tangible for people. It affects everyone. You know, just because 4 million people are going to be paying more for health insurance and Medicaid is going to be squeezed. So if you're in your parent or grandparent in long-term care, your a child with complex conditions, when you take that much much away from our hospitals, our doctors, our researchers, that means pain for everybody. That means we're not going to have the providers that we deserve. It's already hard enough to make a doctor's appointment around here. Have you tried it lately to get into a doctor?
Actually. Let me ask you about, going back to Donald Trump for a minute, in terms of, Dave Weigel was a political reporter for Semaphore. He put out this tweet yesterday. I thought that was somewhat true, and something we've known in Florida when it was a swing state not that long ago, and now nationally. And then he wrote this quote: "A lot of liberal politicking assumes a backlash when the right goes too far. You know, surely this ICE raid will start the backlash. Surely this childless cat lady mockery will start the backlash. There's no plan B when voters shrug and vote for Trump." Obviously, I know you're very sincere, everything you're saying about, you think this is a catastrophe, what's happening here. Is it going to, the voters, I guess we'll wait and see. I know you sound like David Jolly, who's been saying the same thing when he goes out in these, town hall meetings. He says he's feeling the surge here. I know the Democrats were happy when this special elections back in early this year up in some of the conservative parts of Florida, and they did much better than they normally do in those districts, although they still lost. So do you really see this backlash happening here, or that voters are still skeptical of with some of the talking points you're talking about today?
I hear it everywhere I go, and it's not just from Democrats; it's from everyone. We have more people registering no party affiliation because they are fed up.
Let me ask you about that, by the way. But here in Florida, I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. Nikki Fried she hasn't made a commitment to this yet, but she's thinking about opening the Democratic Party primary, and maybe next year, or maybe 28. Open primaries to NPA voters. Where are you at on that?
I think right now that's premature, especially if they are going to try to rig the game on redistricting. I'd like to see some data and analysis behind it, and I haven't quite seen that yet. But I wouldn't rule it out of hand, but right now things are so slippery. We don't know what's coming with their kind of their illegal gerrymandering they're going to try to pass off.
Yeah, and that's totally fair, because when I wrote this, that had not been, DeSantis wasn't talking about that then. And then when Trump started worried about Texas. Another thing, I don't know if, again, don't want to be negative here, okay? But, Nikki Fried, she's the one who said this, okay? I did not say it. At the Leadership Blue, were you down there for that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, down in Hollywood, or at the Hard Rock. She actually said, quote, "Our message is," I'll just say the word crap, okay? She didn't actually use an epithet there. And she said our brand is broken, talking specifically about the Florida Democratic Party. I was trying to analyze why she did that. Maybe it's an issue with donors, let's just be straight up here. You had a high profile state senator leave the party to become an NPA. He said the party was broken, as it were. Do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts there?
You just have to meet people where they are, and the work that you do speaks volumes, and rather than focus on all that and have a pity party. Let's get to work and show people that we are standing up for them and we're fighting. We're pointing out the cruelty and the how expensive it is under Ron DeSantis' Florida and Trump's America.
Oh, I wanted to ask you before we let you go here. Let's see, I had somebody write in about, hold on a second, I'm sorry. There was a lot of different comments here. Let's see here. Never again. I'm sorry. Oh, here's Bob. He says, I called Kathy's office, left a voicemail message. I asked her to please lead us, organize marches, help our voices be heard. Tell us who to call and what to say. Please lead us in our dissonance. I am a Democrat, but something needs to be done. We need true leadership. And I know you've heard that on a level. Democrats are very frustrated. Again, you mentioned at the beginning, not in power. You've been in D.C. on both sides of it, and it's not fun when you're not in power there. But we've seen these major rallies. The No Kings rally from last June was huge. What do you say to that, to Bob here, writing about China?
He's right. I will do better. I need to do better. I'm so glad to be home right now and working, and people they're like clamoring. What are Democrats doing? And one thing I wanted to point out as well, we have, we're fighting in the Congress, we're fighting in the community, but the courts we now have a litigation and rapid response task force, and we have chalked up some wins. We're filing amicus briefs to oppose the shutdown of the Department of Education. That has, we actually won that in the courts. We're fighting to oppose the illegal and unconstitutional shutdown of NIH biomedical research. We're fighting birthright citizenship. We're fighting everything that Trump is doing to abuse his power to set tariffs, filing briefs. We're fighting the unlawful impoundment of federal dollars. We actually won part of a case when they tried to shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So I know folks often ask, what are you doing? And besides congressional hearings and trying to ratchet up communications, we are having some success in the courts, and they are holding. But I agree, we've got to do more, and I'm committed to doing more.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. One last thing. We had Mike Gordon here last week, the prosecutor. Right. I know you wrote a statement, right, to Pam Bondi, I believe, right, trying to get this guy's job back. It looks like it's not going to happen. But what did you think about what happened to him?
I think it's outrageous that they elevate Trump's personal vendetta over the interest of the Govani fraud case, all of those victims who have been victimized already, and now you have the prosecutor that actually brought this case to an indictment, and they didn't even tell the U.S. attorney. They just passed a piece of paper to Mike Gordon, and to think that because Mike Gordon was doing his duty as a prosecutor against the violent insurrectionists that beat up cops and tried to overturn an election is simply outrageous, and it really ticked me off. I fired off that letter right away, and he should be reinstated. But this is what we're up against: a Department of Justice that works personally for President Trump rather than for the people like they should.
Tampa Bay Democratic Representative Kathy Castor, we thank you so much for joining us here on The Skinny.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right, Ray, we're going to transition here.
Yeah, we're going to transition. We're going to stay talking about Democrats here. We're going to come a little bit locally and kind of zoom in on Hillsborough County. Kim Smith, who's settling in here, is the president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party Labor Caucus and a member of IBEW Local 824. Last week, and I'll invite Kim to correct me if I'm wrong here, after about 6 months of trying to make it work, she sent a breakup letter to the Hillsborough County Democrats. In February, she went before the steering committee of the DEC and explained that labor was tired of being taken for granted and only hearing from the party when it wanted money. Kim, did I get that right? And welcome to The Skinny, by the way. Thank you for coming to WMNF.
Thank you for having me here today, and thank you on behalf of all working people in the state. It's actually been an ongoing issue amongst labor leaders and allies within the movement who work for who fight for working families. And 6 months ago, I had it. I'm a very patient person. Mm-hmm. I listen. Okay, I'm an ally. I'll fight for everybody, right? especially for working families, and to ensure that they have dignity and their voices heard in the process. And after months of meetings that I felt where the party, HCDEC, was stuck spinning their wheels in the mud and not moving over an issue that I feel should have been handled outside of that process and outside of meeting space. So, and I understand the issue with Israel and Palestine is a very sensitive issue. I understand that, and I have compassion for everybody who's involved. On the other hand, when we're talking about the state of Florida, where we've been under Republican rule for the last 30 years, and every election cycle, we get kicked in the teeth over and over again, I had to say something. Tired of the infighting. You cannot win without solidarity. And as somebody who's been on my tools for 26 years in the Florida heat, and I'm a rank and file member, okay? I do this because I feel that workers need to have a voice in the process, in the democratic process, and in politics, because at the end of the day, if we're not living with dignity in the state, we have nothing, right? So after months of fruitless meetings where the only thing that was done during those meetings was to oust an unpaid volunteer. I mean, hours of my life that I will legitimately never get back. I mean, meetings that went 3 and 4 hours on Zoom.
And again, this is the Hillsborough County Democratic Executive Committee you're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so after the third meeting of fruitlessness, okay, I lost it.
Right.
I absolutely lost it. And I'm there to win, right?
Yeah, Kim, I'm going to quote you. You wrote this statement out. You said, where is it here? I explained that you talk about the unions, and I explained that we have been the largest funders of this local party, talking about the Hillsborough County Democratic Party, and all we ever see is loss. We lose elections. We lose voter registrations. We lose labor rights, and it's all being done with money wasted and collected off the backs of working people like me and the folks I work with every day. So that frustration is really evident. And again, you're talking about this, I think, a moment ago, about this issue about Palestine, Gaza, and Israel, which I wrote about a few months ago, actually, with Russell Miller, who was the person you're remembering who got ousted. And it really, it has literally divided the local Hillsborough County party, where there's a subsect, a different group now that is going
Hillsborough
out.
Society.
Yeah. So, and tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, you're the IBEW Local 824. What do you do for work? What do you actually do?
I'm an outside communications worker, so I climb poles and dig holes for a living. I crawl through people's attics. I am legitimately on my tools 6 days a week. 6 days a week in this Florida heat. So when I say that I speak for working people and working families, I legitimately do that, and not from a position behind a keyboard. Okay.
Yeah. And you're seeing that this local party is not really answering what you and other working people are talking about.
Correct. And when you have leaders within the HCDEC and within FDP, after I said what I said back in February, and I had some pretty contentious remarks, but when they approach me and they say, what are the issues that workers face? What are working people issues? And I have a dumbfounded look on my face, because how can you not know the issues that working America faces today? And I've brought it up over and over again because of the issues with the insurance industry and the fact that insurance carriers can charge a windshield replacement as a collision. My husband had 3 windshields replaced in 2 years, so my auto insurance is $800 a month. Why are those issues not being addressed? You know, those are dollars and cents issues that affect everyday working families in this state. But we want to fight about a conflict that's half a world away.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not dismissing the importance of it.
Right.
I'm just saying that the issues that we're facing here and now are not being addressed by the party.
Right. It reminds me of like the fact, again, we're speaking with Kim Smith here. We should tell our listeners here.
Yeah, Kim Smith, president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party Labor Caucus, a member of IBEW Local 824, as she mentioned, on a poll, on her tool 6 days a week doing this.
But here we had just Congresswoman Castor here talking about the national issues, but, it starts at home. And as we mentioned, the Florida Democratic Party has enough issues, right? I mean, again, they're in a whole 1.3 million voters, and here locally, and it just, I've heard variations of this, sadly, for decades, quite frankly. I've been covering, been in Tampa Bay area for 25 years. I wrote a big story about the party, Hillsborough County. It seems like, I don't want to castigate all Dems on this, but it is, I'm sure you're feeling that frustration.
At what point, right? Like actual policy aside, Republicans have started to charade as champions of labor, right? And within labor of the country, are you concerned about a shift that sees folks who would normally support Democrats shift that way? What's happening with I mean, there's money that you're going to withhold now from the party. What happens to all that energy and money from your caucus?
It affects all of us. It affects us having a voice in the process, okay? And we have members who, because of the divisive nature of current politics, they don't want to participate in the process, okay? So when organizations look at union PAC checks as these like huge, like a corporate donation, it's not. Let me clarify what a PAC check consists of, okay? It's the dollars and cents off the backs of working class people who are investing that contribution into the process, okay? Because it's a hope that the people that they pick to advocate for them are actually advocating for them. And that's what I do. I feel that regardless of what beliefs and political leanings my colleagues have or other workers within the labor movement, because not all union members are Democrats.
Right.
Let's just be realistic about it, okay?
Sure.
Because
in fact, one of them spoke at the Republican convention, one of the leaders this year.
Correct.
Last year.
Correct. And we have to advocate fairly for working people, and the issues that we address as labor are issues that affect working families, economic issues like safety in the workplace. We're not here to fight about, overseas conflicts and all that. While we may have a passion about it, understandably, the most important thing that we can do as labor and as people who vote is to, work on policy. That's the important thing, is policy that affects all of us. Donate to your causes, but make sure you vote your paycheck, right? And that's what we tell, our members. And so when these organizations take our PAC checks, they've got to realize it's a grassroots effort within the labor community to make a difference in the political process. And I'm going to safeguard those funds. I want those funds to be used in such a way that it benefits working families. And it seems like the party has an issue with it. And I'm sorry, but it's not your money.
Right. Okay.
It's the money that came from my colleagues and my union members. So we're going to safeguard that money and make sure that it goes toward, for a best outcome for all of us.
Have you heard back from anybody at the party yet? I reached out to the president, Vanessa Lester. I haven't heard back yet. She's usually pretty good at getting back, and I know that she listens to a lot of people, but what's the response been like? And have you found anybody willing to pick up your cause here?
I have not heard back from Chair Lester, and I don't have a beef with her. She's had an open door policy. She listens. I truly appreciate that and respect that. But there's a difference between listening and action. And when I brought up the fact that labor has had zero return on investment, I haven't seen any action in 6 months. Like, what are you doing for working families in this state? I mean, I work with people who make $100,000 a year and they're relying on food banks to feed their kids.
Really?
Oh, really? It's not uncommon. I mean, in Hillsborough County, if you make less than $100,000 a year as an individual, you're barely making it. And that's a sad fact for people in this county. I mean, let me tell you this. When I started in my profession 26 years ago, it was like the holy grail of jobs, right? It was a job for life. It was a job that had great pay, great benefits, and all of that. And people knew that if you worked, at this organization, that you were making it. It's not the same because we're getting squeezed.
Yeah, well, that's something that, again, if you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. We're speaking with Kim Smith. She's the president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party Labor Caucus and a member of the IBEW Local 824. That's the affordability issue, right? It is front and center in Florida. I covered I went to the Hillsborough County Republican Party event about a month or so ago, and that's what I focused my story on, that I was hearing from the rank and file Republican voters questioning the legislative local members who were there about car insurance and, of course, about property insurance, which has been, front and center for several years now, obviously, here in Florida. So it is something across the board. Democrats would say, of course, they're certainly not in power here in Tallahassee. Some of the issues you're talking about, again, I hear from, maybe you hear less of that resistance because this is such a Republican state now. People aren't rebelling against their leaders there, but it is, as the Congresswoman said, Governor DeSantis has led the state, as it were, right now. They're talking about being the freedom state and all these great things that are happening, but it's becoming harder for people, regular working folks, ever to live in Florida, definitely. We just have a minute. Oh, we got a call here, maybe?
We thought we had a call.
I think there's somebody down here. Well, I'm going to try this. After last week, we had a... okay, anyway, so let's just move on here. We got a couple minutes left to go here, Ray.
You close your letter with goodbye and good luck. I mean, these things feel... Like, I don't think a divorce is too strong of a word. It really feels like a separation. How anxious are you, or how relieved are you? How long were you holding on to this letter? And what is next? Like, what do the next few months look like for your caucus?
Going forward, I'm looking to build relationships with candidates and legislators who actually do care about the issues of working families. Don't pander to me. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell me that your cousin's brother's roommate's hamster was a member of a union so many years ago, because I'm tired of it. You're either with us or you're not. And the biggest issue that I have within HCDEC and the party in general is all the infighting. Okay? You don't win anything without solidarity. And that's something that this political party needs to learn from unions, is what solidarity actually means. Because at the end of the day, I work with a lot of people. We all come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different walks of life and all that, and different stages in our lives, right? And despite all those differences, we know what solidarity means, because if you don't have solidarity, you don't win. Because united we bargain, divided we beg. I am not a beggar. I am not going to beg. And I'm encouraging all my brothers and sisters, even those who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement or a union, work together to make things better for the working class in this state. Just because unions represent 7% of the population, we're not a special interest group. We represent 100% of all workers. Remember that. We represent all workers, not just labor.
Kim Smith, president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party Labor Caucus, a member of the IBEW Local 824. The caucus just separated from the Hillsborough County Democratic Committee here. And that's going to be it for us here on WMNF Tampa and the Skinny. On behalf of myself, Mitch Perry, and Skip Sassy, Christine's on the phones. We want to thank our first half guest, Congresswoman Kathy Castor, for always coming in here to catch up with us and hear from our listeners and the community. We want to thank you for listening. Joe Ellen Schilke, she's back. Studio One, Art in Your Ear, is back, and it's coming for you right now. Thank you so much for listening. Mitch, any big plan for the weekend?
Well, I go to Orlando for the Republican Freedom event tomorrow.
So fun, man.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening.
All right.
Have a good one.